partnerships between and for members. The FACC New York chapter counts a mosaic of 1,000 members, representing sectors from tech to food, finance, and other professional services. These members have complimentary access to digital events featuring top industry experts and leaders, as well as personalized member-to-member introductions, access to the FACC member directory, and of course, we'll be able to connect with other member attendees of this session here today. Just a couple housekeeping notes. We will be in a bit more of a panel format today, and the conversation between our speakers will last about a half hour. As the style will be more conversational, we encourage you to use your question box function to send a message whenever you see fit. And we will spend around 10 to 15 minutes at the end to go through these, so to not disrupt the flow between the speakers during. Now just to our topic and speakers. Today we will be joined by Capgemini Financial Services and two fast-growing fintech companies, ReciTAL and MagicFinServ, on ways to improve efficiencies and ROI through cutting-edge AI technology. Specifically, we will be discussing case studies regarding the use of natural language learning, machine learning, and blockchain technology. In addition, our speakers will touch on what COVID-19 means for digital innovation within the finance industry and what trends we could see post-crisis. Our speakers today are Sankar Krishnan. He is the Executive Vice President with Capgemini's Capital Markets and Banking Group. Sankar will act as more of a moderator throughout today. Our second, Gilles Moyes, co-founder and CEO of ReciTAL, and Parag Samarth, President of MagicFinServ. I will let the speakers expand upon their roles and companies in their own words as we continue, so they can jump right in. Sankar, as the moderator, would you like to take it away?
Thank you so much, John, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Welcome to all our participants from around the world. To all our French-speaking colleagues from all around the world, and it's good to see such a great audience today. Welcome to this July edition. More importantly, hope you're staying safe and observing all the safety guidelines that each of CDC and governments are proposing. My name is Shankar Krishnan, and happy to be the moderator. I'm industry head here at Capgemini. Very quickly about Capgemini, we are about 15 billion in revenues, close to 300,000 employees around the world, and we are a partner in the future of digital for a variety of top brands around the world. I'm very excited to be together with two of the fast-growing companies, which are also Capgemini partners, part of our fintech ecosystem. We have recently introduced something called a scale-up program, where startups have the ability to industrialize faster, and both Parag and Giles' firm are part of the list. First, I wanted to set the stage as we come out of this COVID. We see a tremendous decline in the number of fintech deals that are being done in the marketplace. Obviously, 2019, we saw 4% of deal flow that was low. That was largely because of China and the trade situation with the US and rest of the world. There were about 3,472 deals done last year at a valuation of 54 billion, of which half of that were around AI. 2020 Q1, we see a reduction to only around 400 deals, about 6 billion. Hopefully, the situation is going to improve after the COVID. Well, if there is such a thing as a silver lining because of this COVID virus, that is the fast track path to digital transformation and the move to digital. Capgemini, as you know, does a variety of research, the World Wealth Report, the World FinTech Report, Retail Banking Report. When we kind of recently polled our over 10,000 consumers across all the continents we operate in, a good 80% said that they would not visit a branch to do any type of banking transaction, and close to 50% said that if any product involves a visit to a branch, they do not want to be part of that transaction. We then asked these same consumers, looking at fintechs like what Parag and Giles represent, and we'll get to that in a minute. What would be the reason you move to a fintech? And obviously, 70% cited low cost. 68% said that, look, fintechs enable me to be a lot easier to use, ease of access, ease of use. A good 54% said that working with a fintech gave them a faster experience to fulfillment for a financial transaction. And a good 39% said that it was a lot more personalized when we with the fintech. So that is the background with which I want to start this conversation as we look at digital as a big enabler post-COVID and after. With that, I want to quickly introduce my two great speakers we have today, Parag and Giles. Parag, why don't you go first, followed by Giles? Why don't you introduce yourself and your company. Then
Thanks, Shankar, and welcome to all the attendees and participants once again. I'm Parag Samarth. I'm the president and business unit head for MagicFinServ. We are a very specialized capital markets focused niche player. We, as a matter of design, focus on AI, machine learning, cloud, and blockchain as technology elements that we want to work with. Our belief is that there are traditional and conventional issues out there in the market, which people have been trying to solve through conventional means all these years. All the more reason now with COVID, cost pressures, the need to do things virtually, remotely, requires that many of the things that you were typically used to doing earlier are no longer available. And our approach is that how can we use some of these new gen technologies to solve some of these commonplace issues in a lot more efficient manner and a lot more virtual and remote manner. So when I talk about some of the use cases that we worked on, our focus is that we've used these new gen technologies not for the sake of these technologies, but because of the efficiencies and optimization that they provide to solve commonplace problems, and we integrate with the existing ecosystem. So we're not here about saying let's rip and replace. We're about saying that how can I make the existing system so much more efficient by using these technologies, and that's what I'm really going to be looking at talking today.
Thanks, Parag. Gilles?
Yeah. Hi. I co-founded ReciTAL in 2017. So we are quite a recent startup. And we are really dedicated to creating software about natural language processing. Actually, from 2011, we could have seen the great improvement using AI to process images, and now the revolution of deep learning is coming to text. And this is that technology that we implement in our solutions. So at the moment, we are deployed in banks and insurance companies in France and Luxembourg. Our technology allows to automatically process incoming emails for customers, and also to automatically find and extract information in very large corpus of documents, like contracts, like terms and conditions, like LIBOR contracts and stuff. And I think I talk about that a bit later. And we have a pretty important research team, given the size of our company, because the technology is really growing quickly, and we want to make sure that first we participate in this innovation, and second, we allow our customers to get the benefits from this technology right away.
Absolutely. Gilles, thanks for that, and Parag, thanks for that. So Gilles, let me continue on the theme you just mentioned, obviously, and let us look at some practical examples of ReciTAL and how it is enabling client productivity enhancement. As we all know, one of the more important regulations that is in front of us is by December 2021, each of the banks will have to move away from LIBOR. And again, as a practicing banker with Citi, and Parag knows this for 20 years, LIBOR was front and central to our very existence, and now that is being replaced by something else. So Gilles, if you can touch upon how the science of NLP is kind of enabling banks to get to this solution.
Sure. Well, so as you just mentioned, banks have made and signed contracts based on LIBOR, sometimes having replacement benchmarks, sometimes not having replacement benchmarks, and so on. So actually, we have several hundred thousands of contracts for what we call structured loans, which have been signed, which exist, and which will be deeply impacted by the new regulation, the fact that LIBOR won't be used as a reference rate. And so in all the banks, actually, in all the CIB, in all the CIB branch of the banks, they have to determine which contracts are impacted, how will they be impacted, depending on what has been signed and mentioned in the contract. And so that is where natural language processing technology can really help, because in some cases, so we are currently working with a very large French CIB. They have 16 1,000 contracts to review by the end of the year. So this is, I mean, humanly almost infeasible. So they have to use technology to help them. And that is where our platform, this is where our platform comes into play. So they will show 1 or 2 examples of the LIBOR clauses they have signed. And just with the 2 or 3 examples, our platform is able to determine all the other LIBOR clauses in all the other contracts. And the platform will present the LIBOR clause to the user, who will be able to say, okay, here, do we have a risk or not? Because in some cases, you don't have risk because you already have planned a replacement benchmark, and sometimes you haven't. So in that case, you have to dig into more details in the contract and see what kind of replacement you could put in place. And to do that, you have to use really the latest technologies of natural language processing, because only keyword-based approach is not enough. Why? Because if you don't have exactly the same keywords used in another LIBOR clause, in another contract, then the system won't be able to detect it. And so you will miss maybe 50% of the contract. So it doesn't really help. And the thing is that deep learning approaches to NLP allows to, so it is based on neural networks, and those networks, for instance, know that car, automotive are synonyms. And it learned that by reading hundreds of billions of sentences, mostly from the web, but also from Wikipedia, from books which have been digitized. And based on that common sense knowledge, it is able to make links where strictly keywords find and replace approach don't work. So this is the use case we're having now, and actually we just complete the first step, which is being able to ingest documents. Yeah. Because that you have also all those scan documents which are sometimes poor quality, so you have also to run the OCR. And the thing is that our platform takes that into account, from really the first original file to the LIBOR clauses automatically extracted.
Yeah, and excellent, Gilles. Thank you for that. And Parag, you are a very unique company in the sense you have solutions on the blockchain and off the blockchain using best of breed technology. I was at a CFO summit recently, and one of the things what is really helping a lot of companies save costs is really during COVID. Obviously, all of us have a big travel budget, and now obviously there is no travel. And coming out of COVID, one of the most important things is how do we do expense automation, and how do we kind of improve the ROI of an investment? Because every company, don't matter if you're Alibaba or Amazon, you are looking at optimizing your expense spend. Right. And I know, Parag, MagicFinServ has developed some really cool machine learning algorithms which enable that. Can you please share with us how that works?
Sure. So I don't know if you are presenting, John, but basically the way I would kind of position us as, thanks, John, is that while ReciTAL, for instance, and I used that term with Jais the other day, and I got a smile, so I'm assuming I was right. So the way I see it is that while they have a solution and they go looking for a problem to solve, we're actually looking more at what is the problem you have, and we go find the solutions to solve that problem. One of the things that is coming out time and again when we speak to decision makers and IT professionals is that many of these technologies on their own are not really giving the final solution. They're not giving the returns that are expected. So AI by itself or blockchain by itself is really not solving the problem. What we do at Magic is because of the fact that we have focused on multiple of these technologies, and we've decided to work with these technologies as a matter of strategy and choice, we end up combining these technologies in order to find a solution. And I'll take the invoice processing, expense management as an example, but that's a very good example of how we don't use these technologies for the sake of these technologies, but we use them in combination and conjunction to solve a very specific problem. And basically the way we differentiate ourselves is we solve your last mile problems. A lot of companies have invested significant amounts of time, money, and effort in implementing, let's say, focused platforms. Like for expense management, you have some focused platforms from SAP, Oracle, and others, which will help you manage your whole expense management function. But then we found that despite having done that, you still have a lot of these last mile issues. So if you were to go to the next slide, the way we look at it is that typically, you have the standard platforms, or you have homegrown platforms. Sometimes you have third-party platforms like from the likes of SAP and others, and these have to be integrated. There is a large ecosystem in place. So even though you may say I have an expense management platform, there are a whole lot of other platforms like payments and receipts and what have you. And how do you go about solving that? So if I was to go to the next slide and take up a very specific use case, the challenge that our customer had is that having implemented some of these platforms, they still found that they were spending about almost 70 to 80% of the time doing manual work. And the reason why they were doing that is because they found that the invoices coming in for the expense management platform, despite all you do, those invoices come from external sources. They had incomplete data, incorrect data, and even though they had some OCR mechanisms, they were not able to capture all the information in the correct form. And then most importantly, the errors and omissions were really causing all the issues. So we kind of studied what the problem was, and we said that the solution is not so much as having a better OCR or a better NLP platform. The solution is actually saying what's really going on. And what is going on is, if an invoice was incomplete, what was missing in there? And typically, if you look at the last 5-6 months of invoices, you can figure out what is going on and what is missing. And that's where machine learning comes in. And we use that to pick up what was missing. Sometimes the invoice is referring to the wrong, let's say, project code, for instance. And again, we look at previous data to find out what could be the correct project code. So that's where it's a combination of NLP to extract the data from the unstructured data, which is the invoice, and then machine learning to figure out what is missing, what is wrong. And then we said, how does the whole thing go about getting processed? And that's where we used RPA. And people typically would call it cognitive RPA, which is like a thinking RPA. And so it figures out who all are supposed to be approving this invoice and validating that it is indeed correct. And then you have to extract additional information from your own sources, like ledger codes and what have you, and you have to then garnish the information on the invoice with that additional information. And that's what makes it complete. And when we put all of this together as a combination of NLP to read the invoice, machine learning to figure out the errors and omissions and correct them, RPA to do the routing, extract all the necessary information. And in the process, we were able to complete the invoice, present it back to the authorities so that they now have a complete, approved, and validated invoice, and they're good and ready to pay. Now, in the process, what happens is that they substantially reduce the manual effort. The errors and omissions are significantly eliminated, so therefore the accuracy goes up very high. And the company is therefore in a position to actually take advantage of the early payment benefits that they might get in terms of paying their vendors on time. And in the process, not only do they save a lot of cost and effort in terms of getting all the manual work out, but they actually gain money because they're able to get those early payment discounts. And all of this by using the right combination of machine learning, NLP, and RPA. And you could possibly then replace RPA with smart contracts. Shankar, you referred to blockchain. So, blockchain, one of the critical elements of blockchain is the smart contract, which is basically like a computer program with all the rules kind of mutualized in those contracts. And in one particular case, what we found is that the requirement was for the information to be sourced from various sources, reconciled so that they all matched, and then a decision taken. And over there, what we said is, rather than use an RPA to move the data around, why don't we use the concept of a smart contract? And we kind of created this smart contract on a database, used technology available from a third-party digital assets, and used it to create a common version of truth. And in the process, therefore, eliminated the need for reconciliation, and therefore allowed them to do the necessary payments and all that in a finance organization. So again, the whole point here is that there is a problem out there. That problem needs a solution, and that solution can be had by the right combination of these technologies. And I think that's where we have distinguished ourselves, and that's where we have provided some of these last mile solutions to our customers.
Excellent, Parag. One of the interesting things we see at Capgemini in COVID and after is also the fact that obviously we were used to the structured data and unstructured data, like we all know, but there is also data coming in from new areas. For example, a lot of our companies in China that are clients of us are, disinfecting properties using drone, for example, or a lot of our insurance fulfillment is happening on the basis of a drone. There's a lot more deployment of 3D printing, especially for masks, so on and so forth. So suddenly we are seeing that the inflow of data is not only as much as it was before, but growing, but there are new streams on voice, video, and combination thereof. So Gilles, in your natural language processing assessment, I know that you have a platform called the Genius, much like a Apple Genius Bar. It kind of helps create a new platform as a service. But my question to you is, obviously, when you do natural language processing on data, it works a certain way, but on voice, it works a very different way. So if you ask the same question to a Siri, to an Alexa, or to a Google, obviously they're kind of the same but different in their own way and may respond. And obviously it's a lot easier when the question you put is weather or news and so on, but it's more difficult when it is LIBOR or taxonomy. So how did you overcome that, and what exactly does the Genius platform do?
Yeah, actually, and many times we have questions for our customers like, okay, what is the difference with an Alexa or okay, Google or things like that? The thing is, the main difference is that the data our customers put in our platform, we don't know it beforehand. For instance, when you ask Alexa, I don't know, who is the current president of the United States, it has already read news, it has already read Wikipedia, and he knows the answer. Here, we don't know the answer because the documents are confidential. So our system must be able to adapt to new knowledge every time the user adds new knowledge. It's also something very important for us, is that we don't share knowledge between customers, because we know that these documents are extremely confidential, and it's obviously out of question that we take some data from one customer to give it to another one. So we have a platform which is able to adapt to new knowledge, which is actually the new documents that the customer is going to put into Genius. So how does it work? Basically, the first thing the platform does is to analyze the document and to split them. So for instance, to split them in articles or in clauses or in smaller paragraphs, so that when you're going to query the platform, it's going to return a small piece of text instead of the whole document, as usual search engine does. A usual search engine, it returns a list of documents, but if the document is 300 pages long, well, you're not through. You still have to go through the 300 pages and see, find the right paragraph, the right part. The platform, the ReciTAL platform, does it for you. So it returns small pieces of information. So the first thing we do is that we automatically split the documents, and actually we do that using deep learning, but with computer vision. Interpreting a document as an image, and as we do, but we are not conscious of, when we're doing that. So here we have to teach the machine to say, okay, this is a title, this is a header, this is a footer, this is an image, this is a table, and all that. And now we have a platform which is able to detect that from new documents. So this is very interesting. And once you have done that, then you can query a document, and for instance, you can say, okay, try to find an answer only in tables, not in raw text, only in tables. So it can say, okay, I know this is a table, so it can filter out. It can also show you only the paragraphs containing dates or amounts, because it has analyzed the text. And I think this is something we don't know, we're not aware of other solutions allowing you to really benefit from these latest improvements in NLP in a very friendly way. So first we analyze, we split, we find the entities, the names, the organization, the dates, the amounts, the layout of the document, and then you can just query and say, okay, search in dates, in tables and stuff. And so this is for the search, and then the extract works the same way, but then you say, okay, do that for every document. So ask the same question for each document and return the best paragraph or the best date, something like that. So that at the end of the day, you have a table with the columns you want to extract for each of your documents.
Very, very interesting, because as both of you know, a lot of the banks have gazillions of data, and a lot of the fines that they pay, especially for wrong reporting of swap activity or derivative activity, there are opportunities where this NLP can be deployed. Parag, it was very interesting to hear how you have combined RPA with the traditional and also have a smart contract proposition. Let us say there are many listeners out today and many banks and non-banks listening to this. What would be the engagement model if they want to work with you and kind of make this bigger?
Yeah, I think that's important, because like I said, there is a problem out there and we are trying to find a solution to the problem, rather than the other way around, wherein I have a solution and I'm going looking for a problem. So typically the way we engage is we get into almost like a design thinking workshop to begin with, where typically a 2-hour kind of a workshop to figure out what exactly is the problem. So as an example, this bank that we were talking to, and we were discussing about timesheets. But the problem was really not the timesheet and the ability to read them. The problem was this huge reconciliation issue that was coming up in the finance department as a consequence of the timesheet coming in, because somebody had to be paid. And you had to obviously reconcile with the various other inputs before you ended up paying. So the problem that was manifesting itself earlier was not really the real problem. The problem was actually more of a reconciliation issue, because of the fact that different parts of the organization were having different data sets, and those data sets had to be reconciled and compared. And then based on that, we go in for a quick POC. So it's almost like a rapid prototyping process. Because if you want to fail, you want to fail fast and get on to it and get on to the next thing, rather than spend too much time on this. And like I said, we typically try and coexist with the existing environment. So the prototyping is not just about, can I read this document, or can I extract that information, but it's also about what do I do with that, and which is why we primarily focus on the capital markets area, because we understand that business and we understand the underlying ecosystem. And once the prototype is ready and the client sees what they will get, which is almost like, you can touch and feel what you get, that's when we get commissioned to create a production run. And that's when we get into the actual production design and development and delivery of that. And typically, as Giles was saying, the document needs to be coached, the document needs to be taught, and information keeps changing. So typically our customers engage us not necessarily only in terms of building the solution, but then somebody has to maintain it, in the sense that, new sources of information are coming in. You've mentioned about, tomorrow something else could come up and suddenly a new set of information source comes in. That needs to be integrated. That needs to be, the engine needs to be taught about it. And requirements keep changing. So, it's almost like a, make sure that the engine is properly read and taught and educated, so to say, so that support continues. And then often customers come back and say that once you solve one level of problem, now let me take it to the next level. So in this whole game of AI machine learning, the challenge is all about the confidence levels. What is your confidence level in allowing this engine to do your job? For instance, take the call. And therefore, the whole trick is to see how I can keep increasing the confidence level and keep doing more and more, and increasingly move from an assisted support to an automated support. And that's the ultimate end objective, saying that can I automate it rather than just assist it? And that's where we want to go.
Giles, in your case, obviously banks are looking at moving away from the LIBOR to a benchmark rate, and there are a variety of benchmark rates out there. What is the engagement model, and how does that look like, given that banks have to fast track this now?
Well, at the moment, what we do is that, so I totally agree that the goal is really to have a fully automated system. At the moment, it's still pretty difficult. So you have to figure out how you can allow the user to check the results while not consuming too much time. How can he quickly check the results? And so this is interesting, because this is not an AI problem. This is a UX problem. which is also interesting. And so we always think a lot about UX in our product. So how can we do that? And so, for instance, for the LIBOR case, it's pretty simple. So at first, you select a couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe, example of LIBOR clauses that you want to extract. And then it's going to present you the next one, saying, okay, according to me, in this other document, this is a LIBOR clause. Is this true or not? And the thing is that very quickly, so you're going to say yes, no, yes, no. So it's pretty quick to do. And after having answered for, so depending on the data, but here for LIBOR, it's feasible. I mean, it's pretty quick. After having answered 10 or to 15 stuff with a simplified UX, then it's going to tell you, okay, do you want me to continue on my own, or do you still want to check? And for instance, you can say, okay, do the next 20 on your own, and let me check. Okay, it's still okay. Okay, so the next 50, and then okay, do that on your own till the end. So and this is something that we call active learning. This is a kind of active learning. So while you're doing the task, you're also teaching the machine, so that you don't waste time because you do your job, but at the same time, the machine is being educated so that very quickly you don't have to validate, and you can say, okay, you can finish on your own. So this is how we do that.
Yeah, and I want to now use the remaining 7-8 minutes to have a free format discussion. So Parag, what are some of the things you wish to share about MagicFinServ that we haven't discussed yet today? I mean, what's out there that people should know?
I think, like I said, one is that let's not get bogged down by what technology and all that. Let's not kind of get into these issues in terms of I already have this, I already have my own initiative, so how can this work? Because like I said, for every automation that you put in place, there'll probably be 10 steps that need to be done manually. And if you look around and see the amount of time and effort that's going in resolving the breaks, as we call it, and even if you have 90-95%, even higher STPs, those breaks are expensive, the breaks are time consuming. In many instances, those breaks result in severe penalties and loss of reputation. So that's the kind of problems that we are going out there to solve. And what we also find is that increasingly technology is allowing us to kind of integrate otherwise disparate, fragmented silos. And earlier, you had a certain minimum threshold level that you had to look at before you said that this is viable or this is economically feasible. Thanks to cloud, thanks to many of these technologies, that threshold has come down substantially. So it's no longer that I'm too small to be impacted or worry about that, or I'm too small to take advantage. I think the beauty of this whole situation is that everybody, however small or big they are, can take advantage of this because the threshold levels have come down substantially.
Right.
And you can solve a 20-man problem as easily and as effectively as a 200-man problem. Just the scale differs, and I would really urge the people to look at it that way and not dismiss the potential opportunity to find a solution just because you think that your issues are not large enough.
Parag, and before I move to Giles, one quick question is, I mean, you have headed financial services at very large companies prior.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the large banks, as we know it, have a not invented here problem a little?
They have that. Many of them also used to get into this whole debate about is my solution better than yours, kind of a thing. And the reason why that was happening is because it was always the case of you have this and I have that, and therefore I can replace yours with mine and give you better. And whereas over here, what we're saying is that we're really not getting into a debate of whether your solution is better or not. However good your solution is, we've seen even the best of solutions still having those gaps in terms of last mile issues. And we are coming in more as a friend and supporter rather than somebody who's challenging you and trying to give you a better return for your investment rather than a different investment proposition. And so yes, you're right. For some of the traditional service providers, you do get into this headwinds in terms of, not invented here kind of a thing. But for us, it's more like, can I be your partner in helping you achieve what you're out there to achieve?
Yeah, and Giles, the European banks behave a little differently. Obviously, some are more conservative than the rest. French banks are now coming out and embracing technology. The Paris FinTech Forum has been pretty good at that, and we've had some good successes there. What are some of the things you want the financial industry to know about things that you do, other than what my questions were?
Well, difficult to say. The thing is that I think actually we had a bit sometimes the same issues than the one you were talking about, Parag. Like, yeah, we can do things on ourselves better than you and things like that. And we actually replied exactly the same thing, that okay, let us see each other more like partners rather than competitors, things like that. So yeah, we have seen in some banks, especially in the field of AI, since it was extremely hype, they wanted to do all on themselves, and then we discussed together and we said, okay, I mean, you won't be able to do everything, and maybe you don't want to do everything because everything is not core business to you. So yeah, regarding the French banks, I think that's the main message, is really focus in the field of AI. Focus on what's really important for you and very specific for your business that you can't outsource, but really for the rest, let the editors and integrators do it for you because it is their job.
Right. And Parag, do you have plans to service clients and opportunities outside of the US as well, or how is that structured?
In fact, the good part about our business, and which is where I feel really sorry because of the travel restrictions and all that, is that many of our clients are located in some really fancy places like Bermuda and Mauritius, and I would love to go visit them there. So the beauty of our business is that you might be headquartered in North America, but your business is all over, and your service ecosystem is in some of these so-called tax havens and relatively more prominent financial centers. So our solution pretty much goes across, and I think one of the benefits of this is it really doesn't matter where you are. In fact, we just recently concluded a large deal with a RegTech provider, and we actually did the entire transition remote, which was something which was a dream for all these years, but thanks to the circumstances, we kind of demonstrated that you can do it, and now suddenly it opens up a whole new opportunity, saying that why do you need to even travel to do transition? Why can't you do it remote? And I think that is where the power of this technology really comes out, that the area and scope of your influence can be so vast. You don't have to restrict yourself to a geography or anything like that.
And geez, in your case, are you open to doing, because obviously the US has a lot more banks, and obviously not everyone is of the same size, but possibly opportunities here. Are you okay to do on both sides of the Atlantic? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, actually, we're already talking with, so at the moment, French banks in the US. Okay. But yeah, I also agree. I mean, the new world after COVID will be, we'll work much more remotely, and so we have to propose solutions to allow that. And actually, that's really what we're doing now, since we are putting the whole platform in a new SaaS version that will be available by the autumn. And for that, so that people, wherever they are, can access that technology and use it. And I think, yeah, we'll have to do that more and more, since the world after COVID will be probably like that.
Sorry, Sankar, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just, as we're coming to the end of our time, I want to just answer the big question that has been coming through, and I'd like to just compile these and let all three of you to answer from your different perspectives. Gilles, you had just mentioned that the world after COVID is going to be different. I'd like to get a little bit more of a concrete idea from your perspectives of what you see happening. Sankar, if you could provide more an overview
Sure.
within
So,
yeah.
Absolutely. So as our participants know and as our panelists know, obviously we have seen Capgemini in 48 hours had to move to a 98% work at home. And I think right now the big question that's being asked is, how much should we move out of that? Because this is working well, and what Parag talked about, expense management that is working well, and a lot of technologies like the ones Gilles mentioned, natural language processing and others can be deployed to get to a better state. So first and foremost, we are personally seeing a lot more push to the digital, and I think it is going to be a very different world in which a lot of leadership at our clients and at Capgemini are asking those questions on what is going to be the transformative model, and how do we kind of work with better technologies like the two panelists today, and do more with less, stretch our investment dollars more. Because as we all know, 2020 is not, it's going to be very tough for H2 to be a year of growth. So somehow get through 2020 for all our shareholders, and then on the back of the demand happening in 2021, continue to build a robust business. Parag?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, we were all forced to work from home, and then now we're saying, this works well. Why do we need to go back? And even if you go back because of the continued precautions, it's not going to be business as usual. So gone are the days when you'll have, 10,000 and 15,000 people working in an office, and your ability to walk across to the person sitting next to you and get a clarification done and all that, which is why a lot of these, collaborative technologies are increasingly becoming relevant. And which is why a lot of things which you would want to normally expect to get done, like, why do things come in not correct and all that, document sources are kind of going, becoming more and more fragmented and disparate. And the usual means of accessing that are no longer available. So if you can harness these technologies, not only is it going to solve a problem, but I think it's going to probably open up a very new scenario that we had never thought of, and that will change the paradigm of working. And not only will it propel us to a much higher level of efficiency, but also to a much more collaborative way of working.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what we see here. For example, part of our customers, they work in customer services, and what we see is that when they have a question, usually the person just asks the person right over here. And the thing is that now that person is not here anymore because the customer service is at home. So they need to have access to the knowledge base. They need to have access to their internal documentation very quickly and very easily. And so I totally agree with Parag. All those collaborative working place, the tools to work collaboratively, which will be more and more used and more needed.
Yeah, thanks. That is my time, 11:45. John, handing it back to you.
Yeah, so thank you all three of you. Just a quick note to the attendees. We had very quickly hinted and used a PowerPoint with a case study. I'd just like to reemphasize, and if I hadn't already emphasized, that these slides will be shared to all attendees, which include a case study for both ReciTAL and MagicFinServ, as well as the contact info that you can reach out to them as far as their specific services or more questions on their specific views of the coming next couple of months in this world. Sankar, Parag, Gilles, I just want to thank you so much for taking the 45 minutes to be here with us to explain a little bit about what your company's doing, how it's interacting within this world, and giving us some insight into what you see the next coming year will be. So thank you very much on the FACC and from all those who joined us here. I would just like to note very quickly that we have another webinar this Friday focused on tax and cash flow, using tax incentives to increase your cash flow. So to the attendees, if you find that interesting, we're looking forward to seeing you there. Once again, Gilles, Parag, Sankar, thank you so much, and looking forward to speaking to you all very soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful
Bye.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone, and be safe. Be well.